Hi, I'm Dr. Ellie Johnson, and I am one of the founders of the Pacific Sporthorse Selection. And with me here today is Clair Thunes of Summit Equine Nutrition. We're really happy to be partnered with Clair this year to provide all of our auction horses with ideal diets. So welcome, Clair.
Thank you, Ellie. It's great to be here.
Thanks for coming. So Clair, why don't we start with what is the foundational part of a horse's diet?
Well, Ellie, as a vet, you know that the horse's anatomy and physiology is really designed to be fed forage. In the wild, they'd be eating forage all day long. And so really we do need to be focused on forage, and so the foundation of every horse's diet, regardless of what they do for a living, is forage.
So this year we're actually lucky enough to have dressage horses, hunters, jumpers, and foals and brood mares. Now that we know that forage is the basis of a good equine diet, why can't we just feed them all the same thing?
That's a great question, Ellie, and actually you kind of hit on the answer in your question, which is that they're all so different. Okay. And so we need to really feed them as individuals, and their nutrient requirements are based in part on what they do for a living, and obviously a growing foal is very different from a hunter-jumper. So their needs are different, and therefore the types of forages they get fed and the amounts of forages they get fed need to be different too.
Clair and I actually tested the forage here at CNDC earlier this week, and it was really an interesting process. Clair, would you describe it?
Sure, yeah. I think it's something that not a lot of people have seen. I know you were quite surprised.
No, I haven't seen it, yeah.
So what it involves is having a steel probe or cora, which I attach to an electric drill, and I insert that into about 15 to 20 bales, a cross-sectional sample of the entire stack. And I take a cross-section through the bale from the short end, and we take that, we put it in a Ziploc bag, and then we send it to the lab. I use a lab in New York that does analyses specifically for horses, and then the data we get back will then be the foundation of building the diet.
We are fortunate to have Purina sponsoring with us this year, and so they will be providing the horses' diets. So once we have the results back from New York on the composition of the forage, how are you going to go about choosing which Purina diet to give which horse?
Well, some of that, Ellie, is based on each individual horse's requirement, and so to figure that out, I need to know what their weight is and what their current condition is, and as I mentioned earlier, what they're doing for a living. And so I'll be taking a weight estimate on the horses, condition scoring the horses to determine, is their weight actually a good weight for them? Do they need to gain a little weight? Do they need to lose a little weight? I'll be collecting a work history, a health history on the horse, so I can kind of create a picture of what this horse's needs are. And then I use the National Research Council guidelines, and using those, that will tell me what each horse's nutrient requirement is, and we'll put the forage in. I like to feed at least 1.5% of the horse's body weight per day as forage. It helps with gut motility and kind of keeping the gut functioning healthily. And then we'll be picking the right feed from the Purina line. So for example, the mares will be getting a brood mare and foal feed. The performance horses, if they're easy keepers, may just get a ration balancer, which will provide any missing minerals and vitamins that may not be in the hay. Those needing a few more calories will have a more energy-dense performance feed.
So I noticed you mentioned that you wanted to feed 1.5% of a horse's body weight. Does this mean that you need to have the forage actually weighed? In other words, do we need to weigh the hay, or can we just feed a certain number of flakes?
That's a good question, and ideally we would be weighing the hay at every feeding, but I realize, especially in a large facility, that that may not be feasible. And so one thing we can do is we can weigh all the flakes in a bale and take an average flake weight.
Okay.
And I'll be giving you a recommendation, for example, 18 pounds of hay, and we'll know that your average flake, say, is 6 pounds, so that'll equate to 3 flakes per day. And then the grain, we will be weighing that as well. But again, we don't have to weigh it every time the horses are fed. If you take a cylindrical container, you can weigh it one time, make a mark on your cylindrical container, fill it to that line, and you'll know then that that's 2 pounds of Altium or 1 pound of Enrich or whatever the feed is that we're feeding. And so that way you're weighing it every time you're feeding it without actually weighing it. And it saves a lot of time and gives you the peace of mind you're actually feeding what you're supposed to be feeding.
Super. So this actually brings up a good point. This is the million-dollar question. Do we need to add in supplements in addition to the grain and the hay?
That's a question that a lot of people have, and it really depends on each individual horse and what they need, but as a general rule, I recommend that everybody add salt to their horse's ration so that it helps with their thirst reflex with the sodium that's in the salt. It's a really easy way of keeping them hydrated and drinking, so I will be recommending that we add salt. In addition to that, maybe some omega-3s, maybe some additional vitamin E, and then other things really will depend on each individual horse. For example, if we have a horse that we know has a history of, a little bit of digestive upset when they're anxious, they're in a new barn for the auction, we may want to add a little bit of support there to help them with that. But again, that'll be on a case-by-case basis.
So it's really important to us that we maximize these horses' potential and have them performing at their best.
Of course.
So is this diet, once you formulate it, are we going to just stick with that diet?
Possibly, possibly not. I really like to get feedback from my clients. I like to find out how the diet's working for them so we can tweak it over time. And it's one of the things I see people leave their horse on the same diet year after kind of thing. And I really recommend people, obviously in your situation, these horses hopefully will all be sold come September. But then when they move on to their new clients, new owners rather, looking to, reassess that diet in, 6 months, 12 months. So nutrition really is an ongoing thing. It changes with the horse's needs.
Claire, we are so excited to be partnered with you this year. We just really firmly believe that excellent nutrition is a cornerstone to having a successful and healthy performance horse and have them performing at their best. And that's what we want to bring people. So thank you so much for partnering with us.
You're welcome.
And we're actually also lucky to have Claire speaking at our auction on September 1st. You will be giving a lecture, and you'll be telling people a little bit more in depth about diet and answering questions, I presume.
Absolutely. If people have questions about what they should be feeding their horse or how they can bring nutrition into their program, I'd be more than happy to talk with them.
Super, super. Well, thank you so much for watching us today. We look forward to seeing you at the auction on August 31st and September 1st.